What you're about to hear has never been revealed to Western media before. This is an exclusive account from someone with direct access to Pyongyang's inner. Circle someone who was there when it happened. A diplomatic incident, a mysterious death, and a government scrambling to find someone to blame. This testimony exposes what really goes on behind the closed doors of the world's most secretive regime, and why one small mistake became a death sentence. For more exclusive testimonies and untold stories, subscribe and become part of our investigative community. Help us expose what the world needs to know. There's a storm brewing in North Korea right now. On the day of the most important event in Pyongyang, something unexpected happened. That one small mistake quickly turned into a diplomatic incident, and someone had to be held responsible. And that finger started pointing directly at me, even though I didn't do anything. So, what exactly happened in Pyongyang? From now on, I will tell you the shocking reality that never comes out from inside North Korea. That day was one of the biggest events ever prepared in Pyongyang. I worked in the event planning department and had handled numerous ceremonial events. But that day, I felt unusually uneasy. From morning, the instructions from above kept changing, and the itinerary was revised 3 times. I could sense that something big was happening. But at that time, I had no idea that this event would completely shake up my life. The atmosphere at the event venue was chilly from the start. People didn't say anything, but everyone was careful not to let their expressions slip. I went backstage to check the event schedule one last time. That's when it happened. Someone shouted, "He's coming!" Everyone held their breath simultaneously and turned their gaze to one spot. At that moment, I felt my fingertips go numb. An unexpected scene unfolded. I saw that scene closer than anyone else, and I immediately felt the air change completely. The surroundings became so quiet that not even a breath could be heard. It was a silence as if someone had made a big mistake. No one said anything, but everyone's expression conveyed the intuition that this could be a problem. After the event that day, I returned to the office, but the atmosphere was different from usual. People exchanged glances and small rumors were spreading quickly. They won't just let today's incident slide. They'll find someone to blame. Such words were quietly exchanged. Although I didn't hear exactly what went wrong, from that moment on, things inside Pyongyang started to go strangely. The next morning, I heard unbelievable news. One of the foreign dignitaries who attended the event had suddenly died. There was no official explanation for this, but insiders were saying something different. Isn't this related to yesterday's incident? The higher-ups have started an investigation. I don't know who said it first, but those words spread quickly. From that moment on, the atmosphere of assigning blame to someone began to form. People became wary of each other and were sensitive to even the smallest mistakes. I became increasingly anxious. The fact that I had written the entire itinerary kept haunting my mind, even though I thought, it can't be. I tried to deny it. But by the afternoon, my anxiety started to become a reality. Someone whispered to me that my name had been mentioned in an internal meeting. Although there was no conclusive evidence, I heard that if someone had to be held responsible, the planning department would be the first to be suspected. The moment I heard those words, my legs went weak, and I almost collapsed. That day, for the first time, I thought about leaving Pyongyang, even though I knew how terrifying that thought was. That night, I realized that I had no other choice if I wanted to survive. That day's event was one of the most important foreign dignitary reception events in Pyongyang. I was in charge of coordinating the ceremonial flow. As always, the venue was tense, with everyone holding their breath. But that day, the atmosphere was even more peculiar. The phrase, "not a single mistake," should be made today, was repeated several times. It was because Kim Ju-ae was attending in person. I still vividly remember the moment when Kim Ju-ae appeared, and all the officials held their breath. I was checking the itinerary as usual, and that's when it happened. The Russian ambassador walked forward much earlier than scheduled. According to the ceremonial regulations, he was supposed to wait until Kim Ju-ae stopped, and then greet her at the designated angle. But suddenly, he bowed his head and brought his face close to Kim Ju-ae's cheek, as if expressing familiarity. I couldn't believe it. That scene was not something that would end as a simple etiquette mistake in our discipline. The expressions of the surrounding officials turned as hard as stone. In the silence of a held breath, Kim Ju-ae's face momentarily stiffened. And that one moment was the beginning of everything unraveling. I had a gut feeling right there. Today's incident will cause a big stir. After that, the event concluded without any further disruptions. But everyone moved around with lost expressions. Even their gazes were frozen. In the vehicle on the way back, no one spoke. No one mentioned that scene. But in that silence, it seemed like a conclusion had already been reached. Someone needs to be held responsible. That was the atmosphere. And the next morning, unbelievable news came. The Russian ambassador had suddenly died, without any reason or explanation. People didn't change their expressions, but anyone who had watched the event that day knew. They knew that his death was not a coincidence. The problem was that someone had to be held responsible for that situation. Why was the ceremonial route so close? Was the pre-event briefing properly conducted? Who was in charge of the foreign dignitary greeting training? All these questions started pointing towards me. From that moment on, I became cautious even about breathing. Every whisper in the office corridor sounded like my name was being mentioned. Who was in charge of event planning? Who was responsible for reviewing the pre-event route? Such words kept circulating. Every time those gazes fell on me, my heart sank. After that day, my life completely changed. And that change ultimately became the final reason for me to decide to defect from North Korea. After the sudden death of the Russian ambassador, the entire city of Pyongyang turned into an atmosphere where one had to be careful about every word. But strangely, that peculiar atmosphere was all directed towards me. As soon as I arrived at the office, people avoided my gaze. I heard someone say in a low voice, as they passed by, "Weren't you in charge of event planning?" Those words made me break out in a cold sweat. That morning, my superior called me quietly. As soon as the door closed, he immediately asked, "Route review, who did the final check?" My throat was so dry, I couldn't even answer properly. I did it. As soon as those words came out, my superior's face hardened. He didn't say anything, but that silence broke me down even more. Oh, are they trying to make me the scapegoat this time? That's what I felt at that moment. Even during lunch, I couldn't swallow my food. While sitting in the cafeteria, I heard some executives whispering and glancing in my direction. The preliminary precautions weren't done properly. Who explained the rules to the guests? Even as I heard those words, I couldn't say anything, because I knew that if I said even one wrong word, it would be written in the report and sent up to headquarters. That day, even the taste of bone broth soup was lost on me. In the afternoon, even greater pressure came. I received a call, "Wait. The investigation department has something to confirm." I knew too well what those words meant in Pyongyang. Simple confirmation. Behind those words, someone's life was always turned upside down. My legs shook with each step down the stairs to the basement. My breath caught in my throat, and the same words kept circling in my head. Why me? I only did what I was told to do. The person I faced in the investigation room said with a cold smile, "Why were the precautions you delivered to the guests insufficient that day?" I was surprised. I had clearly delivered the precautions. But he interrupted me and said, "Isn't there no evidence? Whether you were wrong or someone else was wrong, we need to confirm it now." He kept asking, repeating the same question, watching my expression and attitude. I answered with a cold sweat, but his face already seemed to have a conclusion written on it. "The responsibility will fall on you." That's how it seemed. The investigation didn't end that day. Even after returning, a note was placed on my desk. "Come again tomorrow." Those few words gripped my heart. I couldn't sleep all night. What if someone comes in the early morning? What if someone knocks on the door and takes me away right then? Those thoughts wouldn't leave my head. That day, for the first time, I really thought, if I stay in Pyongyang like this, I will definitely disappear. And from that moment on, the word defection began to rise in my mind, very quietly, but clearly. The next morning, I received a notification to come to the investigation department again. That one-page paper was like a death sentence to me. You've probably heard that if you're called 3 times in Pyongyang, you don't come back. I had already been called twice. If the third time comes, my future seemed predetermined. That day, on my way to work, I couldn't even feel my feet touching the ground. The same thought kept circling in my head. Today might be the last day. As soon as I arrived at the office, the air was different. People who had been avoiding me until yesterday didn't even look at me. Their superstitious fear that if they made eye contact, they would be taken away too, made it even harder for me to breathe. On my desk was a work instruction with a red line drawn on it. That was a mark only given to those targeted for replacement. I heard someone say in a low voice while looking at my back, That person won't last long. Those words tore at my chest. Around lunchtime, I thought my superior would call me in and yell. But instead, he was even quieter. That silence was even scarier. He said with a blank face, "Prepare for the afternoon investigation." His voice was calm, but deep within it was the meaning of, "This is the end." I nodded, but my hands were shaking. Cold sweat droplets formed on the back of my hands, and even breathing was difficult. As the afternoon approached, my heart raced madly. It felt like the door would open soon, and the investigation vehicle would take me away. At that moment I realized, if I stay still, I will die. That's really how I felt. I left my seat under the pretext of organizing reports. My legs shook as I went down the stairs. I walked without even breathing, afraid someone might yell, "Stop!" from behind. Even after I got outside the building, my heart didn't calm down. I kept looking behind me to see if anyone was following. My heart sank whenever I saw someone in a military uniform walking by. That's when I saw it. An investigation vehicle slowly entering in front of the building. I made a judgment upon seeing that scene. That car is here to take me. My legs froze, and my breath caught in my throat. At that very moment, I made a decision. If I don't leave Pyongyang now, my name will be erased from everywhere in the future. I had to escape to stay alive. No matter what anyone said, whether it was the regime or loyalty, it meant nothing. My life came first. That afternoon, I didn't go home. I didn't even pack. I had no words to leave for my family. I had to disappear before someone found out. So I turned my back on Pyongyang and embarked on the path of preparing for escape with my life on the line. And from that moment on, I was no longer the nation's event planning executive. Just a human being who didn't know if they would survive today or tomorrow. On the third day of sneaking out of Pyongyang and moving stealthily, I finally reached near the border. I walked as if running all night. And during the day, I hid in abandoned warehouses or huts. My body was already exhausted. I hadn't eaten properly, but I couldn't stop. I knew better than anyone that if I got caught, it would be the end. That night, a freezing wind slapped my face. There was no moon in the sky, and even the starlight was dim. In that darkness, I cautiously stepped towards the Tumen River. The air grew cooler as I approached the river. I heard a crackling sound under my feet, as if the ice wasn't completely frozen. Even that small sound made my heart drop. When I heard a dog barking in the distance, my legs almost froze. I hid behind a tree, unable to even breathe. Just then, a searchlight flashed across from the river. I crouched and froze in place. The light passed by, barely grazing my toes. In that moment, I felt like my chest would burst. Shortly after, the sound of the patrol's footsteps grew closer. "Check that area first." I heard a low voice. I swallowed my breath and prayed. "Please, just not today." Their flashlight beams cut through the trees. I stood still as ice, afraid even my breathing would be heard. They were just one step away from seeing me. But just then, I heard another whistle from afar, and the patrol changed direction. I didn't move a muscle until they turned away. My legs were shaking. As the patrol moved away, I quickly made my way to the riverbank. The moment I stepped onto the ice, a cold chill seeped into my feet. I faintly heard the sound of running water. The ice was thinner than I thought. I carefully moved, but suddenly heard a crack. I immediately lowered myself and lay flat on the ice. Even that small impact made the ice shake. In that moment, the searchlight shone over my head again. I froze, not even blinking. If the ice broke, or the light shone on my face, it would all be over. I don't know how much time passed. After confirming the light was slowly moving away, I began to crawl again, holding my breath. My fingertips were already numb, and my lips were cracked and bleeding. But I had no way to retreat. I had to cross the river to survive. As I crawled across the ice with my last bit of strength, I saw a faint light from across the river. It was supposed to be a Korean Chinese village. That small light seemed like the warmest hope in the world to me. As I took the last step off the ice, I thought I heard someone's footsteps behind me. I didn't look back. I was afraid I would be caught again if I did. So I ran with all my might. To live just one more day. That's how I crossed the Tumen River and set foot on Chinese soil. But even in that moment, my heart started to race faster. I knew. This was the beginning of another hell. When I stepped onto Chinese soil, I felt a brief sense of relief that I had survived. But that relief didn't last more than a few minutes. The sound of the patrol's whistle from across the Tumen River still echoed in my ears. And China was not a place where I could let my guard down. As you know, if you're caught as a North Korean in China, you're sent back immediately. If you're dragged back to the north, you know what happens next. So I had to stay hidden. With every step, I looked behind me. Would the police appear? Would someone report me? Those thoughts kept weighing on my mind. In the Korean-Chinese village where I first arrived, I cautiously sought help. Fortunately, a kind woman let me in. "Stay here for a while, but you'll need to move soon," the woman said in a low voice. I nodded, but my heart grew heavier. I knew too well that China was not a different country, but one that helped North Korea by handing over defectors. Even though the woman helped me, I couldn't stop worrying that she might report me. Even as I received help, a part of me was always trembling. A few days later, I started working odd jobs at a restaurant. I stood in front of the sink from dawn till dusk. But more frightening than the hard labor was the unpredictable police crackdowns. The restaurant owner repeatedly told me, "Be careful what you say. If you mention you're from North Korea, we'll all be killed." Whenever a patrol vehicle passed by, my heart raced wildly. I breathed carefully while washing dishes, afraid even my breathing would be heard. Every day there was a life filled with constant fear. There were many people on the streets who looked similar to Koreans, so I always watched their faces. Were they security agents sent from North Korea? Were they coming to catch me? Even in China, I lived like a hunted animal. I couldn't sleep peacefully even when I lay down. Even the sound of a cat meowing outside the window made my heart sink. If I heard a door slam, I'd jump up, thinking someone was bursting in. Life became even more grueling. I barely spoke Chinese. The Korean-Chinese woman helped me a few times, but I often got reprimanded at work for not speaking the language. I didn't get paid on time. I even heard, "You're from the north, aren't you?" I couldn't say anything. The moment my identity was revealed, it would be the end. So even if it was unfair, even if I was hit, even if I was robbed, I had to endure it, to survive. Then one day, a police crackdown occurred near the restaurant where I worked. Patrol vehicles came to the front door and checked people's IDs. I froze in my seat, trembling. The boss hurriedly pulled me out the back door. "Get out, quick! If they catch you today, it's over." I ran through the back alleys without even breathing properly. Crouched at the end of the alley, the police's flashlight beam skimmed over the wall. The light came close to my face before slowly moving away. In that moment, I realized once again, China was by no means safe. It was after that day. I was convinced that I could no longer stay here. The fear of being sent back to North Korea, crackdowns, the anxiety of not knowing when I might be betrayed this place, was hell, too. So I made another decision. Now I have to go to South Korea. If I stop here, I'm finished. And so, I started moving again, towards an even more dangerous path. It didn't take long to realize that it was difficult to hold on in China any longer. The fear of being sent back, the crackdowns by the Public Security Bureau, the days of living in hiding. I ended up finding a route to South Korea through a broker. The broker said just one sentence: "If you don't go now, there won't be another chance." With those words, I bet everything. But I didn't know that another hell would open the moment I started moving with him. We first met near the southern border of China. The broker cautiously told me, "You just need to quietly go to Laos." But I knew, if caught for illegal entry into Laos, I could be sent back to the north immediately. Nevertheless, I had no choice. Every time I got off the bus, every time I passed a checkpoint, my heart raced. If I, who couldn't speak a word of Chinese, got caught, it would be the end. In front of the checkpoint, as the public security officers checked IDs one by one, I was hunched over, sweating in my palms, trying to hold on. The moment they looked up at my face, I thought my heart would stop. Fortunately, their attention turned elsewhere, and I barely made it out of there. The Laos border was near a dense forest. As night fell, we found ourselves wandering through a forest path without a single streetlight. The broker told us to keep quiet. Even the light from a flashlight could give us away. Even the sound of leaves brushing against our clothes seemed loud. It felt like even stepping on a single stone underfoot would bring out the crackdown forces. I had no time to feel hunger, cold, or tiredness. All I could think of was that I had to survive. When I arrived in Laos, I was exhausted. But this wasn't the end. The broker said again, "You need to cross into Thailand to be safe. Because once you enter the South Korean embassy in Thailand, you won't be sent back." But the journey to get there was the most perilous. We had to cross a river, switch between old trucks, and hide in a cramped room for several days. There were times when the broker disappeared. I felt my heart sink, wondering if I had been deceived. But he too was moving to avoid danger. Each of these situations was terrifying. When I finally entered Thailand, I felt a sense of relief. But the last hurdle remained. It was being caught by the police and taken to a detention center. At first, I didn't understand why I had to be arrested by the Thai police and taken to a detention center before going to the South Korean embassy. But that was the only safe way to get to the embassy. In reality, when the police gestured towards me and said, "Come this way," I trembled, feeling like they were taking me to be sent back to the north. Inside the detention center, it was hot and suffocating. I sat among people from various countries, waiting day by day. The sense of fear from being detained was great, but on the other hand, there was hope that from here I would be connected to the South Korean embassy. One day my name was called. I was so tense that my legs went weak. What if something was wrong? What if someone sent from the north was waiting? Dozens of thoughts raced through my mind. But the person standing on the other side of the door was clearly a South Korean. "This is the South Korean embassy. You are safe now." The moment I heard those words, my legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. And so, I was finally able to enter the embrace of South Korea. The moment my name was called at the Thai detention center, I couldn't even breathe properly. What if the procedure was wrong? What if people from the north were waiting? These thoughts filled my mind. But when I opened the door and entered, the words I heard were completely different. "This is the South Korean embassy. You're okay now." The warm hand handing me a paper cup. The greetings in Korean, it was a moment I would never forget. The tension released in an instant, and tears poured out right there. After that, the basic verification process followed. Name, age, family, hometown. I felt like I was finally telling my story properly, after living in hiding for so long. As I wrote down a few things, the staff member carefully flipped through a piece of paper and cautiously spoke up. "A few days ago, there was a big incident in Pyongyang. It's related to the Russian embassy. Have you heard about it?" The moment I heard those words, my heart sank. There was no way I wouldn't know about that incident. I took a deep breath, suppressed the trembling in my hands, and carefully lifted my head. And I opened my mouth. Yes, I was the person in charge of that event. The staff members instantly stopped and looked at me. Their expressions hardened, and the air in the room became tense. One staff member said in a small voice, "You were in charge of that event?" I nodded. Yes. After that incident, things in Pyongyang went strangely, and I was blamed as the person in charge. I was about to be executed. So I ran away. Even my voice trembled as I said this. The staff members exchanged glances, and very quietly, with a deep sigh of relief, they said, "Just the fact that you've come here alive is a miracle." That incident is being handled very sensitively from a diplomatic standpoint. Now that I know the situation, I understand why you had to come out in such a hurry. With those words, I felt my whole body relax, and I leaned back against the chair. I really survived. As that thought rushed in, tears welled up again. After arriving in South Korea, life at Hanawon was a new world for me. The habit of waking up every night at the sound of the door didn't easily disappear. But here, I gradually realized that no one would break down my door and come in. Here, I could breathe freely. I didn't have to be cautious, and I didn't have to tremble at the expression of a passing person. When I walked through the market, when I smelled the warm, rising aroma of broth, I thought, "Ah, now I'm truly alive." But as much as freedom came, a deep longing for the people left behind in my hometown lingered in a corner of my heart. That night, crossing the Tumen River, the image of me shivering on the ice kept coming back to me. If I had misstepped even once back then, I wouldn't have made it here. And the last words I heard, "This is South Korea. You are safe now." That sentence completely changed my life. Now I live a new life in a new country, but deep within my heart, one wish remains. Someday, when unification comes, I want to comfortably cross that river I risked my life to cross. When that day comes, I will be able to proudly say, "I came all this way to live, to protect the truth." And thank you so much for listening to my story until the end. Your small attention, your subscriptions and likes can be a great hope for our countless compatriots still trapped in silence. I came this far believing in that hope, and I will continue to speak the truth. Thank you.